welcome to a special edition of The Reporters. I'm Bob Seidenberg with the Evanston Review, and with my fellow panel members from the press, Bill Smith, publisher of Evanston Now, Jennifer Fisher, editor with Evanston Patch, and Sean Jones, reporter with the Evanston Roundtable. Well, you guys, we're in for a treat tonight. It's election time in Evanston. Coffees are being held, lawn signs are out, and it's not even spring yet. It's a special time. And we have the distinct pleasure tonight of interviewing candidates from Evanston's 5th Ward. It's a contested race, and with us tonight are Carlis Sutton, to my left here, if we can follow that, and Alderman Delores Holmes. Why don't you guys, let's start off by telling us a little bit about yourselves and why you're running for office, or why you're running for re-election, Alderman Holmes. Why don't we start with Alderman Holmes?
Okay. Well, Delores Holmes, and I've been the alderman for the last 8 years. I always tell everyone my first 4 years was a learning process. The second, we've been able to do a little business, and I'd like to continue what we started and finish some of the projects that we have ongoing. So that's why I'm running again.
A little bit about your background, Alderman. I know you've only been around Evanston a few years.
Well, yeah, a few years. I've been here for
Isn't there a building named after you?
Well, there's a building named after me, yes. Thank God, I've been blessed with that. My background is really education. I have a master's in education, although I worked as an administrator for 27 years with Family Focus. I ran that program and retired in 2002 and was looking around for something to do, and I found 5th Ward Alderman.
Boy,
so I've been doing that ever since.
When I look around for something to do, it's I don't know that I go right to the Civic Center. How about you, Carlis? Tell us about yourself and why you're running for office. I know you have also a long background in Evanston.
Yes, I do. Good evening. My name is Carlis Sutton, Carlis B. Sutton, and I'm a write-in candidate for Alderman of 5th Ward, third-generation Evanstonian, a lifelong resident of the 5th Ward. Basically, I went to Haven and high school and what used to be Foster Elementary. I come from a family of hardworking people and a diversity of graduates from Northwestern University, and I've always chose a lifetime of service. That was when I finished high school. I went away to college, then to the Peace Corps, and then lived away from Evanston for several years, and then decided to come back to take care of elderly parents. And as a result of these lifestyles now, I see some of the issues and concerns that I would like to see addressed. And I basically would like to have an opportunity to see that if we can't get some of the things that I really think the 5th Ward needs, and the kind of advocate for those kinds of issues and supports for the citizens and the constituents of the 5th Ward.
Well, you've kind of got me intrigued. I'll let our panel members get in, but what are some of the issues that, you know?
Well, mainly it's gentrification, black, especially men, unemployment, housing, and the environment, and also the changing ethnicity. We're the only group in Evanston that has lost ground from the census in 2000 and the census in 2010. And I'm very concerned about that I see a future in Evanston, but I don't see many people who look like me in that picture.
Do you want to respond to that, Alderman?
Well, things have changed, and they've been changing for a long time. It started really back in the 80s, if you go back and look. I think that the diversity in the 5th Ward now is really good. And I think some of the things that Mr. Sutton mentioned, like housing, is something that we've been working on for these last 8 years, and certainly these last couple of years we've been able to make some progress with that, with the NSP2 funding that we were able to get the 18 million, and we have 100 units in the city of Evanston, and about half of those are in the 5th Ward.
NSP2 being
a neighborhood stabilization program that came out of the federal government, and it allowed us to purchase foreclosed homes so that we could make affordable housing. So that some of the people that are leaving, which is a concern of Mr. Sutton's and mine as well, we want to be able to make sure that people who were born here, raised here, want to stay here, can afford to stay here.
One of the questions, if I might jump in, one of the questions that relates directly to affordability is the level of taxes in the city. And over the last 4 years, the property tax levy has gone up about 14%, which is basically double the inflation rate during that time. And so I wonder if you could each address whether you think that that rate is sustainable, or whether you believe that there should be a lower target for increases in property taxes, and what you think that target would be.
Carlos, yeah. Well, the target, I think, ought to be resources available, especially to elderly people who want to remain in their homes. As a senior citizen, I have found difficulty in trying to get loans to do the basic stabilization and infrastructure of not only housing. I also have two concerns about taxes. Unfortunately, since there are so many vacant properties in Fifth Ward, our property has been devalued for the second time. However, with the new construction going up on Foster, it has raised the taxes of surrounding citizens, and that's been an impact and a difficulty for senior citizens. I'm concerned about access to resources, but mainly being able to stay in our home. And the tax rate
that doesn't really address something that's within the council's direct control. And what's within the council's direct control is what the property tax levy is going to be. And I guess I'd like to ask again, what do you think the increase in the property tax levy should be over the next 4 years? Should it be limited to the rate of inflation, or should it be allowed to be twice as much as the rate of inflation, which is what it has been over the past 4 years?
Okay. I do not want it to see twice the rate of inflation for two reasons. Number one, when you're on a fixed income, it's very difficult for you to have other resources to pay for the increase in property taxes. And secondly, when I look at the two large things that make our taxes so great are the support of 202 and 65. And I think there's some other things that we could look at as the city, especially, to find other ways to reduce the taxes, especially for elderly people and for people who want to maintain their homes in this community.
Delores, what would you answer that?
Well, I certainly would not like to see it inflated anymore. And as you know, over the last, we were able to hold the property taxes this past year, and hopefully we'll be able to do that again. But if you go back and look at it, most of the increases have been for debt services and for the pensions, and we don't have a whole lot of control over those either. But I'm hopeful that we can keep it level at the rate it is now, and certainly lower if possible. Any way that we could do that.
Jenny?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about jobs. That's another piece of the economic puzzle, obviously. What would you do to bring jobs to the city or keep employers here? Do you want to start, Mr. Sutton?
Yeah, I certainly do. One of the concerns of our community was, as we met at Family Focus several years ago, was to set up a job training program. And we thought that this would be a great opportunity with NSP2 to have job training, especially available for citizens of the Fifth Ward, to get the skills necessary. Because no matter how affordable a house is, if you don't have a job to make the payments, it's not affordable to you. And so job training would be one of the greatest interests. I would like to see the city expend some kind of resources to providing those. And that directly also affects the issue of violence. When we look at the number of young people who are involved in violence, I often wonder if they had other options and other opportunities to get the skills to make employment, would they result to that same lifestyle.
I'd like to ask a follow-up. How would you fund the job training that you're talking about?
Yeah, two ways I would look about funding the job training. First, we have in Evanston enough buildings first that are vacant, and secondly, we don't have the large number of factories that we used to have at one time. So we would have to use some kinds of resources from either HUD or from other agencies in the federal government for grants to dictate, just like they did with the Brenshaw and the $18 billion to be designated to the Fifth Ward. And one of our highest priorities would be job training, especially for the citizens of the Fifth Ward.
Alderman Holmes, do you?
Yes. Well, first off, NSP $2 was not for training. I mean, it was only for housing, so that was never a possibility. TIF dollars, of course, as you know, TIF dollars for all of the TIFs in Evanston, there's a portion that goes to both school districts, and the one that's been going to the high school was for some job training, and we've been really working really hard with the high school to make sure that the school is just not focused on those who are college bound, because we know a lot of young people are not college bound, and that there should be some other kinds of training, skills training for them, and we're really pressing with that, and high school is very receptive to some of that. Hopefully we can work with Oakton, where some of our tax dollars go as well, to bring some more programming into the city. And as you know, this past year, well, last year, we were able to add the youth and young adult division to the city because we just didn't have that focus. And some of us had been really pressing, because we have to be able to take some responsibility for the young people who sometimes graduate from the high school, they have a diploma, but they don't have any skills, and they hang out at what we call Church Street University. I mean, they're there. And we've got to do something about that. And so I think the focus that we've taken, the mayor has been very, very, I want to say aggressive with trying to move this ahead. So I think with the cooperation of the District 60, District 202, and Oakton and the city, we're going to be able to make some changes. We have programming going now. We have a project going with the Youth Job Center, Career to Pathways to Careers. It's working. Kevin Brown, who was brought in from California to run this program for us, and we've been able to pick some young people off the streets who were not being productive, who have now completed the first portion of that, and they've been in jobs, and now to find permanent jobs for them is the next step. And we also have to do education to our community in terms of getting employers to hire our young people. You know, we have the summer work program every summer, but we need to have something more, particularly for the age 16 to 25 is where we're focusing.
Sean?
To follow up on that slightly, one of the best ways to guarantee we got plenty of jobs is to have a bunch of new businesses come to town.
Absolutely.
With now hiring signs out in their window. With that in mind, what do you believe the city's policy should be regarding incentives to attract new businesses here to Evanston and to retain existing businesses and encourage them to expand? What should be the focus? For example, should your focus be on jobs, tax revenue, foot traffic, reputation of the city, things of that nature? What should be the policy on economic development for the city? Why don't you start with this one, Alderman Holmes?
Okay, fine. I think that our Community and Economic Development Department has changed over these last couple of years, and the focus has changed, and we are trying very hard to retain and of those businesses that are here, and to help those that need to expand or want to expand to be able to expand. But I want to talk about particularly the Fifth Ward, where we didn't have a lot. But in the last 2 years, we've had over 24 new businesses to start up in the Fifth Ward, which I'm very, very proud of, helping them to now, you know, maybe they'd only have 1 or 3 jobs, you know, new jobs to offer, but it's more than we've had in the last 40 years. So
Well,
I'm
just
very,
is that net new businesses? I mean, some have closed during that time
well,
as well.
some closed too. Of course, some closed, but then they close all over the city. And there has to be more support from the city to new businesses to help them. There was a new business on Simpson, actually, that I drove by one day, and I had no idea they were there. And I stopped, and I was talking to the lady about her business, and she was telling me about it. And I said, well, who helped you with your business plan? She said, I wrote it myself. I said, well, you know, we have that kind of help at the city to help you. Of course, she did close because she didn't have a good, solid plan. And I think that the more, if you know, the workshops and things that the city is having for residents that are want to start businesses have been very, very helpful. They did one just a couple of weeks ago. So I think that the focus that the Director Griffin and his staff are doing now. The staff is sort of spread out over the city. Different staff people have different responsibilities for different sections of the city to really help the alderman and the people in the ward and the businesses in those communities to build. If they want to stay, we want them to stay. We want to help them to stay in every way that we possibly can.
Mr. Sutton?
Yeah, I'm quite concerned, especially when we drive through the Fifth Ward to see all the abandoned office buildings, and sometimes we refer to them as the drive-in businesses because they're there and they're not sustainable. And the reason they're not sustainable is for two reasons. Number one, the number of jobs that they offer are very limited, and two, from talking to the business people that I've lost, not being able to afford the high taxes of Evanston when they could go to other communities, set up a business and make a profit. I don't know what kinds of things the TIF was supposed to have been channeled for economic development. And I don't see why more of those resources can't be channeled to establishing economic opportunities for people in the Fifth Ward, not only to open businesses, but maintain them. And I don't know what kind of resources that will be available from the city, but I'm also looking at going out to outside businesses, and mainly like franchises, and see if they have the kinds of interest in bringing the kinds of jobs into our community that are so desperately needed for young men and for women, and alternatives for people who can't get into training centers and can't afford the tuition for colleges. So there are a lot of ways I would attack that to get businesses sustainable. The first thing would to make the environment conducive for them, where we don't have a very competitive environment in Evanston as other surrounding communities have.
Did you want to get in there, Alderman Holmes?
No.
I see a little discrepancy, though, because Alderman Holmes is talking about the addition of 20-something businesses, and you're talking about areas where, there's a lot of vacancies, and, are you identifying a specific area, the two of you? Or,
we can go to any area. We could drive down Church Street, we could drive down Dodge, we could drive down Emerson Street, and not only have we been burdened with the largest number of foreclosed homes, which also is a burden on our community, but also the kinds of jobs that are coming in. I'd like to meet more service-oriented jobs. Evanston is now the restaurant capital of the North Shore, and we've had one that came that was pretty good and left, and kinds of businesses were more service-oriented to give the kinds of needs for senior citizens and for younger people that we don't have opportunities available now, not only in Fifth Ward, but in Evanston.
Bill?
We've been talking about jobs generally, and I'd like to shift our attention for a moment to the number of jobs at City Hall. The number of employees in the city has dropped by about 100 from a peak of 890 around 8 years ago. And given your desires to control property taxes and other expenditures by the city, and assuming that the economy doesn't just go gangbusters over the next few years, what do you think the size of the city workforce is likely to be 4 years from now, and why? Delores, if you could tackle that first.
Well, I hope it won't be much smaller, although, we have to look at in terms of where we're going to cut. And we've cut, since I've been on the council, there has been drastic cuts, and we all feel, really bad about that. But you have to do what you have to do in terms of being able to meet the budget and not raise the property tax, because that's all I hear, in terms of property taxes. People don't want the taxes to go up, but it's expensive to live here. And I think we all make sacrifices to live here. I think everyone. And when I look over the overall ward, the Fifth Ward is really large, and it's much bigger than Church and Dodge, and people concentrate on that piece because it's near the high school, and there's been a history which we can't seem to get past of some activities there that were not productive for the community. But we have the whole ward going all the way over to Sherman at Maple and Noyes and Simpson. So I look at the whole ward in terms of that. So when we talk about looking at where the workforce is going to be in 4 years from now, it may be smaller. I think we've cut as much as we can cut. There's no fat. There's really no fat left. And services, I'd not like to see services cut anymore, particularly for those citizens that need those services the most, and that would be our seniors and our lower income families. Of course, we're real proud that we have the Erie Center now, because we had the health center closed, and that cut down on staff, but it also really affected a lot of the families who needed the health services that the city provided. So we have to look at things like that, in terms of where would the cuts come from. I'm just not sure of where they would come from, Bill. I'd be very concerned about that. So I'm hoping, my hope would be, is that it would not be smaller. And if maybe the economy will go boom, boom, and we will be able to increase and get some of the things that we've lost back.
Okay. Carlos?
Yeah, I know times change and so do situations, and I guess being a recipient of the Evanston city government, Dad was a garbage man, my brother was a garbage man, and was able to purchase a home and to send his sons to college. We've gone down now from 3-day service to 1. It's very difficult when I look at my water bill, while we're paying almost $100 a month for empty cans to sit behind our houses. Every time the city has said that they were going to do something to benefit the ward, it seems like an unreasonable burden to people like me who are trying to maintain their homes. And especially when I go to the city, I guess I was spoiled as a young person having the kinds of reception and people that I knew who could handle my problems. And I'm still having a little difficulty. I'm gaining now with 311 people. I don't hang up the phone on them as much as I used to. They're getting a little bit better, but that kind of insensitivity bothers me, that when dealing with direct problems. And the services, it's very hard for me to justify as a taxpayer the increase in taxes and the substantial reduction in services, especially with employees that used to provide these services in Evanston at the City Hall.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit here, and several recent events have highlighted a tension between our police force and some citizens. Particularly, I would talk about the Church and Dodge that you just mentioned, but other parts of the 5th Ward. It's not limited to the 5th Ward. There have been incidents in the 8th Ward and 2nd Ward as well. What can be done to improve the relationship between our police and other first responders and all the citizens of Evanston?
Communication.
Yeah, it used to be in our community was a time that we looked out for each other. Now snitches end in ditches. So no one is working together. I think I'm the only person running for office that has buried 3 young men, 2 from my elementary experience, 1 from my high school experience, and also I've had 2 people from my Sunday school class racially profiled. So my view of the Evanston Police Department from the perspective of the children that I work with is one that we would like to see drastically change. I think a good movement is a sensitivity training that they recently went through. The other thing, as I would like to see, more of the officers required to live in Evanston to get to know the people. It's a big difference when you go home to Des Plaines and Glenview and other places and you take your dollars out of our community, which so badly need them. The police do a good job here, but there is a double standard that we need to address. And that double standard can be changed with training, proper training of officers, but there's a certain sensitivity that needs to be escalated when dealing with minority students as the number of minorities increase, especially in 5th Ward and 2nd Ward.
Alderman Holmes.
Well, the police department is making some progress in terms of that. The workshop that Mr. Sutton alluded to was done by Dr. Thompson from the University of Kentucky, and I had the privilege of sitting through a couple of the sessions, and they were excellent. And hopefully, we're going to have him back in the fall, not only for the officers but also for the community, because we've got to bridge that gap. The police have a job to do, and I think that we have to educate our citizens to understand what that job is. But we as citizens also have a job to do. And I remember the day after a young man was killed, the mayor and I were walking on Brown, actually, and I think you might have been there.
Yes.
We met this young man who said, he just believes if you see something, you ought to say something. And so I've been saying that to everyone. If you see something, say something. And we all have that responsibilities, and I know what you're saying about snitches, but I think that we have to control our communities. We have to control our homes. We have to control our blocks. And if we can get people to begin to do that, take ownership, leadership and know that, then I think the other elements will understand that and know that that is not what we're going to allow and accept in our community. So I'm very concerned about the violence, and I've been touched by it. A lot of the young people that have been shot and killed were families that I worked with when I was at Family Focus. So I have really strong feelings about that, and know families personally. So the loss touches me personally, and I know that it doesn't do well for us as a community. We're small enough. I always say that Evanston is small enough to do anything. I think that coming together, we can do anything, but we have to first sit down and talk. So for me, communication is the first thing. Having the officer really begin to understand the people that they're dealing with, and that will come through some of the training. You're absolutely right. We have to have more training for them. But we also have to have our citizens to understand better the workings of the police department. And I think the Citizens Police Academy is a good recommendation for citizens to take that class to see how the police department actually functions.
Do you favor a residency requirement?
We just got through doing this survey.
Yeah,
Which you just heard
ask you about that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bill. Yeah,
No, it's okay.
Let me just say, Bill knows that I really pushed to try and ask. I asked, I think back in the fall, what kind of incentives could we offer to first responders to want to live in Evanston? And we were sort of expecting some of the answers, but I have to say that I was particularly personally disappointed and a little hurt by some of the responses that were given. But I think that there's always hope. I think the city can help do some of that. We do have first-time homeowners loans. Now we have a lot of affordable housing and things that could maybe help to do that.
To cut you off, I know they don't do that at city council meetings.
That's
on
okay.
I apologize. But I really appreciate this conversation. I know it's going to continue out in the community. There'll be some more opportunities for people to follow the candidates. I believe early voting starts March 25th. This year. So. And
absentee voting is right now, so you can go vote tonight. Tomorrow.
Let's vote for the door. But and the election is April 9th this year.
Yes, that's correct.
So we wish you the best of luck, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.